Thank you.
Mhm.
Is the intro not playing? Sign on. Is the intro playing? What is going on, mi gente? Happy Wednesday night for a special edition of Margaritas with Marcus. It's my 10-year of the SFAAA anniversary, and what better way to celebrate than talk to a candidate that's here to change the league? You know what? Let's get to know this commissioner in training. Sonny, get out the way. Live TV, baby. Let's meet Josh in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Josh, welcome to the show. How are you, man?
Thank you. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good, man. Good, man. Thanks for joining me. So, Josh, when I heard that you were running, I needed to sit you down and I wanted to pick your brain. Now, first thing first, before we even jump into the election, who is Josh Yeager? What makes you? Who are you? Talk to us.
All right. So I'm originally from Minnesota.
Okay.
Grew up, born and raised, and I grew up playing sports all my life. In kindergarten, I was in wrestling and I played basketball. And then I went to college and ran cross country and track in high school and college. Graduated from a small school up in Minnesota, and then I went to get my master's degree in sport management. So I've been around
Okay.
sports my entire life. And then interestingly, fun fact that the reason I joined the league is, I miss sports. I miss playing it. So
Okay.
one of my
And
best
how long have
friends,
you? Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, one of my friends got me involved in the league, Daniel. So, and I've been in the league the past 12 years.
Oh, wow. So, after 12 years, have you ever held any position in office, or is this your first time running for office?
No, I was on the business development back
Okay.
in what 2021, something like that, during COVID years.
Okay, so after all this time, there's been plenty of times to run for commissioner. What makes this so important that you want to run for commissioner now?
Great question. So, I think the timing is right for me right now, with my past experiences running the Hurricane Showdown the past 3 years, been on the board. I've been in D division, the
Okay,
C division, B division, and now this past year we took second, so we're moving up to A. I'm also on the upper committee for iPride. So with all those experiences, I believe I'm more well-rounded candidate ever more now than ever. I've learned a lot from all of those experiences. That gives me a different perspective. I also have umpired the last 2 or 3 years, so just seeing things from a different lens
okay,
makes me feel, now's the time.
okay. Right now, a big problem that a lot of players are saying is that there's not enough representation on the board. If you notice, a lot of the board members are on the same team. Do you think that's fair? And would that change once you became commissioner?
Well, so if elected, right, I'm on Team South Florida United in the upper division. So, I think that's what people have to decide. Um, and at the same time, I think it's important that candidates do run, right? So, at the end of the day, whoever's running, and then if there's no one to run against anybody, then that's the team that's going to go into the board, right? So it's always important to, have as many people out there who are willing to run and for
Mhm.
people to support the person who they think is best fit for the position.
Now, that was a beautiful Miss America answer. What do you really think about Glitterati? I'm just kidding. I'm just messing with I'm just messing with you. Give me
No.
3 things that you would change right now if you became commissioner. What's the first thing you do that you'd change?
All right. So, one thing that I've talked a lot about is a divisional rep, right? It gives us a person to go to. So, have a D rep, a E rep, a C rep, and an upper division rep. And that's a person who can, really represent each division the appropriate way. And then those people can kind of go to the board, right? I think it's important to have um, more communication, I guess,
Representation,
and the
communication.
representation, right? So, and again, it kind of goes back to what you said as well, is not to have the same teams represent, but at the same time, get the right opinions in there, competition, whatever the problems may be, and also what's going well. I think we talk a lot about the negative, but
Yeah.
we also have to talk about the wins.
Now, how
Um,
would this person get nominated? Would it be within the league and within their division and they get voted, or how would this process be? Or we don't even know yet. It's just in the works.
Yeah, it would be a little bit of both, right? So a little bit in the works is, just something that, can evolve, right? But, I think, number one, someone has to want to do it, right? And
Yeah.
then at the same time, after that, let's say we get five people who in each division or whatever it might be, right? I think it's, for me to have those one-on-one discussions to make
Yeah.
sure that that person is ready for the task at hand, and then
Okay.
to kind of decide and, get approval, right?
Okay. There's a big problem with the check boxes: gay, straight, bisexual. A lot of teams, which we won't name because this isn't that type of episode, are using bisexual for straight players. I mean, and it's blatant, it's obvious, it's in our face. What are we going to do about that, if anything?
That's always a tough one, right? So, many moons ago, the I Pride was sued, right? So it's a global issue, not just in our own league, but it's across the board,
Okay.
right? It's I think at the end of the day, individual players have to be accountable, right? So that's
Hmm.
something that they have to live with, is managers have to live with, right? So, there has to be accountability with self first. I always, try to practice that as much as possible, right? In my
Yeah.
everyday life. And then, is what the league and the players. It's a players league at the end of the day. I'm just here a figurehead, if elected, and hopefully when elected, to
Hmm.
go through that.
It's funny you say that. It's a players' league. Do you think it's really a players' league right now, or do you think it's just run by certain players? I mean, if you notice, it just seems like the same people always go to the World Series. It seems like the same people are in charge of breaking the rules, not even. I mean, it just seems like there's a change, but only if you're in a certain clique or in a certain crowd in the league. How are we going to change that? If you're not cool, so to speak, how can you not get the perks? Like, how are we going to change where everyone feels the same and not cliquish, so to speak? I mean, it's always going to be cliquish, but how are we going to make a change where it doesn't just seem like it's one team?
So in terms of the World Series, right, you have to earn your berth to go there,
Hmm.
and play each week, right? So whoever has the best record ends up going. There's certain bylaws that we have, right? And I think back from a few years back that there was not enough bylaws, right? And that's where the managers kind of council went into, and we're probably over policed by it on some level, right?
Yeah.
So, one thing I also talked about in is working in the gray, right? So we have black and white, and then,
Hmm.
as a leader, we have to work in the gray and kind of do that. Some of the problems when it comes to gray, right, is that some people are going to get upset,
Yeah.
some people are not, right? So how do you police it? It makes it, a very challenging thing. But I think one of those things is transparency and communication. For me, I believe in, if there's something that needs to be discussed, here's what I'm thinking, and this is the reason why. And I'll give you an example as an umpire, right? Like some people
Okay.
might not agree with my call. It is what it is
Yeah.
sometimes, right? But this is where I'm standing as an umpire compared to where you're standing over here in the dugout, right? So you have a different perspective. It doesn't mean you're right, doesn't mean you're wrong, right? It doesn't mean I'm right, it
Hmm.
doesn't mean I'm wrong. How do we collaborate and do the right things? I think there has to be empathy. I think there has to be sympathy towards things, and it
Right.
doesn't always have to be. We have to lead in the gray sometimes.
Absolutely. So you believe in transparency. Like it's not going to be like, oh, this. Speaking of transparency, would you actually, as a commissioner, maybe put in a rule or anything to get voted for where we can actually see who votes for certain things? There was a situation with one team where it was a captain's vote, and certain captains said that they voted one way, but then it was exposed that they were just lying and they just were really being shady and voted another way. Instead of people being able to manipulate the system and say, hey, I voted for this and actually voted for something else, is there a way that we can actually see who voted for what? So that way people can actually stand on what they're voting for. Because it's like in public, they're acting some type of way, but then when it comes to voting and the situations and like board things, it's completely different. So, in transparency, is there a way or a rule that we can see who votes for what?
Well, at the if you're talking about managers meetings, those votes are everybody can see who votes which way, right? In the board. and the managers. It can you have two ways to do it. You can do I, or you can also do individual vote.
Well,
So
this was
all
an
those,
email vote. This was an email vote. It was a special vote for a certain situation that a team had. So the managers had to vote by email. When the emails, and again, you're running, so I know if you can't totally answer this, or maybe you can, but the emails were where the votes were given, and then they requested, to see who voted, and they were declined that request. So it wasn't really a lot of transparency. So how would you change that when teams try to, back things up and do, the right thing, and then when it's met to the board or certain people in the league, it's just a complete hole.
right? I mean, very similar to if it's an email vote versus a in-person vote, right? It's a little bit different. But
Mhm.
I think there is a right to know what the vote was. Is it 21-5? Is it 15-14, right? And then, we do have different chairs. So maybe that's where the ethics chair gets involved and they can kind of see, how the votes are and make sure that the votes are tallied up the proper way.
Okay, okay. How would you improve the overall experience for the players? Games, events, communications. Do you feel like we'd have more events? Do you feel like besides the after parties, there's more meets? Like, what would you do?
Yeah, so I think that's one great point, right? We have a pretty good attendance overall
Mhm.
with the after parties, right? But how do
Yeah,
we get more involved in our community? Because at the end of the day, our community is what needs to we need to support them and vice versa, right? We're here for each
absolutely.
other. And how do we go to Pride nights? Whether it's we do the Marlins, for the most part, right?
Yeah,
But how
that's
do we
always
get to the
fun.
Panthers? How do we get to the Heat? In different community. That's kind of that outreach from a sponsorship level, even as well, right? And how we can support. From a player's perspective, what do we get those T-shirts if you win the league and stuff like that? How do we do a
Yeah.
better prize package for the league? One thing that I created for the Hurricane Showdown, we do the rings, right, for first place. It's not just about first place; it's about everything and everybody. So it's kind of just looking at it in a different perspective. Another thing I talked about is the player experience especially when it comes to retention. The When you first start out in the league, we have that ratings day. They don't know what that is, right? Like, so it's
Yeah.
like, oh, you're thrown in there. What's next steps look like?
Mhm.
Um, and how do we have a 30-minute Q&A after that and make sure that we set these people up for success and we're not just throwing them out to the
The Wolves.
managers and out to the
Yeah.
wolves, not the wolf pack, but
Not the
just
Wolfpack.
um
Love you,
but
Wolfpack.
right, right. So, and then, don't forget about us volunteering, right? So, how do we
Right.
give back to the community? So, how do we maybe clean up the drive? How do we go to the beach or something to that
Yeah.
effect, right? So, if elected, I'll throw this out there or when, right? So, the first lady, who would be Ricky, the mayor of South
Okay.
Ball, that
Yes, First
I think,
Lady.
I would probably, you're one of
Bringing
the
you back
first
to
first
church,
ladies,
honey.
right? Right. So I think he would kind of take up the volunteerism and help us
Yeah.
get more involved. That I would put him in charge of that.
Oh, absolutely. And he has just such great energy and just such a great persona that it's like so welcoming. So yeah, he would kill it in that for sure. So
Right.
when you are elected, if and when you are elected, what are the first three things that you're changing?
Okay. So I've talked a little bit about, right. So the divisional rep I think is huge. So that's one
Mhm.
thing, and the also a skills clinic, right. For me being an upper player, I think it's important that we give back as well. We get to play a little bit. We don't get to play that much because throughout the nation there's not a whole lot of upper teams, right.
Yeah.
But how do we pay back and pay it to the E division, the D division, C division, and make people better? So I think we can get more involved. And we have a new team. Yay. South Florida United B is coming up.
Yay!
Um,
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. So, I think it's important to give back from that perspective. And then, like I said, strengthen the communication and stuff like that for new players. I mean, those are the main three things
Those are
that.
strong things, absolutely. That's definitely positive and like, just pushing the league forward, which I mean, being in the league for 10 years, our current commissioner, shout out to Rocky, he's done a great
Definitely.
job. We're going to miss him. And, it's just time for, new regime, fresh new blood and, new ideas. But let me tell you something. Rocky really came in and killed it. So shout out to
Yes.
Rocky, old Wolfpack member. Love you, brother. And yeah, it's all about just new energy and infusing new things and new ideas. And,
Hmm.
I really think that, just seeing you in the league and just watching you, communicating with you in different tournaments and everything, I do really genuinely feel that you're for the people. I don't really think that you're like have a certain mindset if it's like, hey, if this and that. I really genuinely feel that you're here to make a change and to really take the league to the next level. So I'm really excited that you're running, and for everyone that's running, big ups to you as well, because this
Yeah.
takes so much time, so much energy, and you actually do want to make a difference. Anyone can talk shit and say, hey, you got to do this and do that, but you guys are actually running and making a change. So, shout out to you guys, and, big ups to you as well.
Thank
So,
you.
who inspires you?
Oh my goodness, good question. Who inspires me? I would say
Yeah.
my parents at the end of the day. They've been
Okay.
supportive. They've been to many different tournaments. They've been to the World Series when we had it in Minnesota. They supported me. And
Nice.
and being there, in this world, especially being gay, right? We don't always
Yeah.
get that support and having that. And the cool part this past couple weeks, I've had my nephew come down to town, and then my
Nice.
sister and my niece. So I think it's family, and how do we, this is a different set of family, and that's why I joined the
Yeah.
league.
And that's beautiful. And I've seen this league just help so many people, including me. You really meet new people that become family, your best friends, your lovers. I mean, it's what you get from it. You know what I mean? So, what's your favorite memory of the league so far, besides when you win commissioner?
I mean, I'll give you two different ones.
All right.
So, my husband did propose to me at a game back, 10 years ago or whatever it was. We've been married
Oh,
now 11 years.
oh my
So,
God, that's so beautiful.
right. So, and we've been together 22 years. So stability. Um, you
Wow.
know,
And gay years, that's like 40 to 50 years. So,
right, right,
congratulations.
right. Hey, I'm only 25, so we met when we were two
Oh,
or
yeah.
three.
So,
So.
well, we listen and we don't judge.
Right.
That's
Um,
awesome.
but I think another cool moment. We did take second at the World Series last year,
Yes,
but I would have to.
congrats.
We won two out of the last three Naga Cups. We were the last winner of Naga Cup. Now it's going to be called I Prize, so we get that
Okay.
a distinction too. It's not, I've taken a lot of losses too. So, I think the wins, obviously are right there. They're a memory, but when I first started in C, we went 1-15. So I
Wow.
know where it is.
Yeah.
It was my first year, and then the team worked up, and we got better each year with practicing, going to tournaments, and so
Mhm.
forth. So
You know the
that's
struggles.
cool.
So it's not, it's like you started from the bottom, now you're here, you
Yep.
know? So what would you say to everyone that's watching right now to vote for you? Why should they vote for you?
A couple, the three things I said first, right? And I have just a couple things that I've also a little bit talked about, and assisting in travel and different expenses, right? There's a lot of different expenses, player fees, traveling fees, and so forth like
Mhm.
that. So, and also having a league-wide fundraiser. So a couple different
Yeah.
ideas, we can do different raffles, right? How do we have a SFA got talent? How do we have a draft tournament and stuff like that that can generate different money. Um,
Nice.
and then also I do would love to bid for the iPride Cup. It would generate lots of money within the community. It is just for
Okay.
upper, and it is and it's for the legends or masters now, right, and upper.
Okay.
But the economic income that would come in would be huge
Yeah.
for us, right, and that would
So many
help.
different teams.
And that would help generate money for back into the league that we can disperse out for whatever team that would like to represent. We
Yeah.
do a great job within the league of going to the World Series. We're going to send 19 teams. We have 32 teams, right, this year to the World Series, which is insane. So kudos to the league.
My team better make it.
Yes, yes, you got this. um And and we do a good job going to the Hurricane Showdown, but we don't send very
Yeah,
many people to Orlando. We don't send very many
yeah.
people to.
Why do you
And
think
we
that
expect
is?
them all to come here, right?
Why do you think we don't send a lot of people to Orlando, or like a lot of teams don't go? Because it's so close, and they really turn out for us. Why do you think we don't do the same?
You know, Great question. I think it's about just, how do we have that outreach? It's what, $500 a tournament, right? Plus you're going up there. It's
Mhm.
$1,000 at the end, what, give or take
Yeah.
per person. So locally it's not as bad going to Tampa and Orlando, right?
Hmm.
But so you're gonna go up there, spend $100 in gas, you're gonna spend $200 in hotels and so forth. So you're not walking out of a local tournament probably for less than $500. It's an expense. So how do we help um, you know, give a
All
little
right.
bit
Well,
back.
you know what? I'm loving all these ideas so far. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna jump into the chat and let's see what the kids got to say. Let's get some questions from the audience. Let's see here. Our first question is from. Let's see. This one's from Council Jam, and it reads: in addition to scorebooks, what happens to the committee that were scoring games using iScore and or the Game Changer?
From back then,
Hold on a second. What is your opinion on? Okay, here we go. And this one is from someone that I'm very familiar with,
right?
Ed Gavinsky.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on our league's current rating system and how we do? Are we lenient, too strict, or just right? What is your opinion on our league's current rating system and how we do it? Are we too lenient, too strict, or just right? What are your thoughts?
A combination, right? So, I think proof is in the pudding on some level, right? We went to the World Series, what, the last 2 years, there hasn't been any protests. So that's a huge kudos to the league. I know as a manager, it can be challenging, right? When I have a player who has decreased and I would like to put in a ratings change for that person, but at the same time, this is where my cap is, right? And you got to be careful to wiggle room through it. And I need to bump this person and give them an extra point, but this person really deserves a point lower, right? So how do we get it right? But I can't move this person up until this person goes down. And how do
But
we have?
how about, and sorry to interrupt you there, but how
Yeah,
about a situation where someone, and this is just hypothetical, someone on the ratings committee purposely changes someone's score and lowers it so they can join their team, and it's blatant and it's obvious. How would someone report that? And when it is reported, it's just brushed off. That's what I think that the problem is that a lot
right.
of people are having with the league, and just people on the board currently. It's that if it's not benefiting them, it's not worth it. They don't really give a fuck. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, I don't mind. I'll change your score. And again, this is all hypothetical. Yeah, I'll change your score to make sure that you can join my new team. But no, I'm not going to change that person's score, even though they don't really throw because they're a catcher. So what you know what I mean? So it's like things like that are what give people like a certain like sour taste. So how would you as commissioner seeing that, what would you do?
Right. So I mean, that's always the hottest topic. I mean, I've been in the league 12 years, and radius is always, probably the hottest topic. And how do
Hmm.
we make sure that we have the right people on the committee, right? Have a diverse group of people, and I think it's, how do we have it? Are you going to tournaments? What are you seeing? How do we have an upskilling and making sure that they totally understand the questions, right? And it can't just be like, okay, well, it's facts. Either you can do with something or you can't do something, right? So
Right.
how do you have the evidence? And that's what we're voting on the evidence of this person not being able to do a certain question, right? And
Hmm.
running, throwing, hitting or whatever it is. But it's not pencil whipping it because this person's on this team or this person's on this team. That's the wrong thing and it sends the wrong message. And it's important that, hopefully the right people are in place. So, right now you know, w- there's X amount of members, right? And it should be a diverse group of teams at the same time.
Hmm.
I think it's what, one upper, and then whatever it is, I forget exactly, but if there should be the right amount of people. And I can honestly say there hasn't been an upper representation. So that's one thing that we have been missing. It's only one
Okay.
person and one vote, but as an upper person, it's a little bit easier for me to say, okay, this is what a 16 is, this is what a 13 is, and how do we look at that from a different perspective and a different lens,
Right.
because no rating is the same rating, right? Like, one thing I think we also need to do is, well, two things. One is Marcus and Josh aren't the same, even though let's say we had the same rating, right? You could
Right.
be a 14 and I'm a 14, but you might have three running questions because you're fast as hell, right?
Hmm.
And I might not, right? So then I might hit a little bit differently. So we tend to look at player to player versus the actual questions, right?
Okay.
So we do, I think we can do a better job as a league in understanding that part of the things. And for me, I've always owned what I am, and I think we need to own it a little bit better, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
in 2015, I didn't know anything about ratings. I went to the World Series and I almost got protested out, and I
Wow.
would have been devastated,
Of
like,
course.
because I didn't know anything. Like, I paid all this money to go to the World Series. I fundraised it all summer long, and then here I get
Hmm.
thrown out. Right? No one knows
Yeah.
that. So
Wow.
I think part of what I talked about new players and that development, right? I think that's something that needs to be discussed, right?
Yeah.
And then on the second piece of it, right? So then I knew I was gonna get bumped up. I moved to C, and that's when we created a C team, right, into there. So I think it's important to own, and then again, moving to from B, now we're moving to A. I can tell you 100% of other teams in the last 4 years don't move up, right? So I think we have to own that piece of it. So hopefully I've answered your question. I know it's a long one,
No,
but
well,
it
thank
is the
you.
hottest topic out there. But again, it's about having the right people in right place. And another thing, you have to move people around. It's not the same people year after
Right.
year, season after season. But how do there's assistant commissioners who's over the ratings, right? And they need to see that process. um and again, if there's 15 people on there, the evidence
Hmm.
should be the evidence. And it- not saying it should be unanimous, right? But if the
But
evidence
it
are the
should be
evidence, it should be pretty close
right.
to being, if you have a 8-7 vote,
Yeah.
I don't know, right? Like, do we give that
That's
question or do
yeah.
we remove it, right? But if it's
Yeah.
16-0, and I think we have to. I think another problem with ratings is that a lot of people say, "Oh, tomorrow's the deadline. Let's put it in." You're not doing the justice, right? Because they need to see it. They need to see the evidence. Are you showing the
Right.
evidence and so forth? So I think everybody needs to do a better job. And, for me, I think if, we're having this great discussion right now, right? How do we have the same thing with our managers? And
Mhm.
are the managers who are in the managers communicating this to you? Because we do talk a little bit about it in managers' meetings, right? But is this message getting conveyed to our 500 members out there, right?
Speaking of managers, would you install a rule that only one manager per team should be on the board to not cause a monopoly? How do you feel about that?
So, you know, it's tough, right? Because you have to have people running for positions.
Hmm.
So if people aren't running, then what are we going to do, right? We have bylaws in place. I think if as is important, I don't necessarily agree or disagree. I think it's important not to have a lot of representation from one league, but I think it's also important to make sure that people are running and for the position. So it's a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
on how to look at it. You know, I think, again, and I said it at the very beginning, right? It's about the players, right? It's about the managers. The managers truly, for the most part, run the league, right? There's a bylaws,
Yeah.
and they have to be followed. If they're not followed,
Amazing
accountability,
managers.
yeah, and accountability can happen, right? So,
Hmm.
if the board isn't following it right, there's steps from an accountability
Right.
standpoint that can be done.
Well, you know what, Josh? I'm really excited for you to go ahead and be running and just because it's a lot of sacrifice being commissioner. And by the way, if you're watching, voting opens up tonight. You've got until Sunday to vote. I'm going to put the link in the chat so you go ahead and have it. Make sure to vote. Josh, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. Do you want to leave us with anything else, one more thing before we head out?
No, well, first off, thank you for taking this
Of
time.
course.
I know it takes a lot of sacrifice for what you did, so I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
From the bottom of my heart. For the league, hopefully, vote for Jaeger. I have a good background and I'm here, I'm open. So if you have questions, shoot me a text, shoot me a Facebook message. My email's in there. I don't mind, picking up the phone and calling. I'll do that for you when I'm elected. So vote Jaeger. It closes at the last pitch on Sunday, so it's open. So please vote for me, and I
Hey,
appreciate it.
vote, guys. No matter who you're voting for, go out there and vote. So that way you can't talk shit when things aren't going the way you want. Josh, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you for opening up and letting us know you, because everyone in the league doesn't know you. And you know
Right.
what? You seem like a pretty great guy to me. So go out there and vote, guys. And if any other candidates want to jump on the show and, talk to the teams, talk to the league, just hit me up on the email. Thank you so much, Josh. Looking forward to you. And you know what? Good luck, man. Wishing you
Thank
the
you. I
best.
appreciate it.
No problem. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me for my special edition today. And you know what? It's all about love. It's all about passion. And go out there and vote. Remember, we pay the league. So go out there and have fun. And remember, if you can look at yourself in the mirror and you're happy with what you see, that's all that matters. I'll see you next week for some pop culture right here on Margaritas with Marcus. God bless you guys. Have a good one. Bye. No, bye now.